The stars stretched endlessly across the black canvas of space, sparkling like tiny fires in the void. For centuries, humanity had reached beyond Earth, building colonies, ships, and alliances with alien civilizations. Despite their relatively small numbers, humans had earned respect across the galaxy. They were clever, adaptable, and fiercely determined. Yet even with their growing reputation, peace was fragile and always threatened by forces that did not understand mercy. Captain Elias Renner stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, his eyes fixed on the swirling nebula ahead. The ship hummed with life, each crew member moving with purpose. Humans and allied species worked side by side. Lyrans with their tall, slender frames, Vossians with their armored skin and sharp eyes. Together, they formed a convoy of hope carrying supplies and support to the outer colonies near the volatile edge of the galaxy. "Status report," Elias said, his voice calm but carrying authority. "All systems are normal, Captain," Lieutenant Mara Chen replied. "The convoy is intact and sensors show no threats in the nearby sectors." A quiet sense of peace filled the bridge. Crew members shared stories, laughed at old Earth jokes, and listened to the soft hum of Lyran music piped through the ship's intercom. The Resolute felt alive, a floating home where trust and camaraderie bound everyone together. But in the darkness beyond, the Xylar Dominion watched. Their ships, vast and menacing, drifted silently in the shadows. Xylar eyes were cold, calculating, and filled with hatred. They saw humanity not as a worthy ally but as a rising threat, one that must be crushed before it could claim its place among the stars. Elias did not sense fear. He had faced adversity his whole life: plagues, wars, famines on Earth, and now the uncertainty of space. Humanity survived because it never surrendered, and he carried that belief like a shield across the bridge. Then, the sensors flickered without warning. The dark shapes of the Xylar fleet appeared where there had been nothing moments before. Massive ships with jagged black hulls and ominous red lights moved like predators. The fleet had no mercy in its eyes, no hesitation, only calculated destruction. Evasive maneuvers, Elias barked. The crew moved instantly, but even as they acted, the first shots rang out. Plasma beams sliced through the convoy with deadly precision, cutting apart ships, tearing through defenses and igniting explosions that lit the void with fire. The Lyran flagship erupted in flames. Its proud silhouette shattered into fragments, sending shrapnel and panic across the fleet. Screams echoed through comm channels. Allies, friends, partners, innocent lives were being killed without warning, without mercy. Mara's voice trembled over the comms. "Captain, they didn't give us a chance." Elias felt a burning rage ignite deep in his chest. His people, his allies, were falling. The Xylar Dominion had crossed a line that could never be ignored. The Resolute launched countermeasures, but the Xylars were overwhelming. Missile swarms and energy blasts tore apart ships that had once carried laughter and music. Still, Elias refused to run. Retreat was not an option. "Not yet. Signal the Union," he said, his voice steady but icy. "They need to know. Humanity will not forget, and they will pay." Around him, the crew moved with quiet determination. Fear was present, but it was transformed into resolve. Eyes that had once shone with camaraderie now burned with anger. The first fires of vengeance were being lit, not just to fight, but to ensure the memory of their fallen allies would never fade. The stars, once calm and distant, now seemed closer, almost alive, reflecting the emotions swelling within the humans aboard the Resolute. Pain, loss, rage, but above all, the unshakable belief that humanity could endure, survive, and rise stronger. Elias looked at the burning debris of the first destroyed ships, the faces of the fallen flashing in his mind, and in that moment a silent promise formed in his heart. Earth would respond. The galaxy would remember, and humanity's wrath would ignite the stars. The USS Resolute drifted through the debris-strewn void, carrying the survivors of the attack. Silence filled the corridors, broken only by the distant groans of damaged systems and the quiet sobs of crew members who had just witnessed the unimaginable. Around them, the stars seemed indifferent, shining brightly over the burning wrecks of ships, over the lives that had been stolen in an instant. Captain Elias Renner gathered his officers in the strategy room. The mood was heavy, filled with grief and shock. Mara Chen's eyes were red from crying, and the other officers struggled to hold themselves steady. Elias's gaze swept across the room, calm but resolute. "We were weak today," he began, his voice low but firm. We failed to protect them. But weakness is temporary. Grief is temporary. What matters is what comes next. And what comes next is not surrender, not fear. It is justice. Mara's voice trembled. Justice. Or revenge, Captain. Elias looked at her with unwavering eyes. Revenge is blind. Justice is precise. We will strike back not because we are angry, though we are, but because the galaxy must learn a lesson. Humanity will protect what is ours. We will not allow this to happen again. The survivors nodded. The words stirred something deep inside them. Rage mingled with sorrow, sorrow with determination. Humanity's wrath was not a fleeting anger. It was a fire, smoldering quietly now, but ready to consume anyone who dared to harm them or their allies. The Earth Starfleet Council acted swiftly. News of the massacre reached the homeworld, sparking outrage and sorrow across Earth. Entire fleets were readied, ships were upgraded, weapons enhanced, and soldiers trained relentlessly. Humanity would not strike blindly. They would strike with precision, with planning, with unstoppable force. Elias and his fleet became the first instruments of this wrath. They began small, hitting Xylar supply lines and patrols, rescuing prisoners from enemy ships and intercepting communications. Every mission was executed flawlessly, every strike a message to the Dominion. Humanity remembered, humanity would not forgive. Yet the pain of loss remained. Every ship destroyed, every victory won, was a reminder of the faces that would never return. Elias often walked the quiet corridors at night, staring at the empty bunks and silent control stations. He imagined the laughter that had once filled them, the stories of friends and allies lost forever. Each memory strengthened his resolve. One day, the Resolute approached a derelict Xylar vessel floating in space. The ship had been abandoned after a skirmish, but the evidence inside was horrifying. Among the wreckage, Elias found a small Lyran insignia, scorched but intact. He held it in his hand, feeling the weight of the lives it represented. "We will honor you," he whispered. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. We will make them pay for this." Around the galaxy, whispers began to spread. Humanity was not just another species, it was becoming a force. Their wrath was methodical, precise, unstoppable. Allies from other worlds, inspired by Earth's courage, began to join them. Slowly, carefully, humanity built a coalition of those who had suffered or feared the Xylar Dominion. Every battle, every raid, every rescue mission was more than just survival. It was a statement, a promise, a warning. Humanity's fury was not mindless, it was righteous, deliberate, and terrifying. For Elias, the hardest part was balancing sorrow with action. Every life lost weighed on him, but it also drove him. Each mission was a tribute to the fallen, each victory a testament to the unbroken spirit of humanity. As the Resolute set course for its next mission, Elias stood on the bridge, looking at the infinite stars. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and cruel, but humanity had something the Xylars did not: courage, compassion, and an unshakable will. The fire of vengeance had been lit, and it would not die. "Prepare for the next strike," Elias said quietly, his eyes scanning the stars. "For our friends. For our people. For justice." And somewhere deep in the void, the first embers of Earth's wrath began to burn brightly, promising a storm that would shake the stars themselves. The void ahead was silent, almost peaceful, but Captain Elias Renner knew better. The galaxy was holding its breath. The USS Resolute led a small elite strike force toward the Xylar-controlled planet Kryvax 9. The planet was heavily fortified, its orbit patrolled by countless enemy ships, but humanity's patience and planning were unmatched. Elias stood on the bridge, eyes scanning the endless black. "This is our chance," he said quietly, almost to himself. "A chance to honor our allies. A chance to make them remember why no one betrays humanity." Lieutenant Mara Chen adjusted the targeting console, her hands steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. "All systems ready, Captain. Boarding teams are in position. Missiles are primed. The element of surprise is on our side." The attack began with silence. Not a word, not a shot, just shadows moving through the darkness. Then, with precise timing, the first missiles pierced Kryvax 9's shields. Explosions rippled across the station orbiting the planet, sending shrapnel and fire streaking into space. Humanity's boarding teams launched simultaneously, cutting through corridors and airlocks with speed and determination. Every step was measured, every action purposeful. The Xylars inside were powerful, but they were unprepared for humans who fought not just with skill, but with unbreakable will. Elias led the final strike team himself. As he entered the heart of the station, he saw the devastation the Xylars had caused, their traps, their experiments, and their prisoners. Each face of an alien ally who had been unkilled flashed in his mind, fueling a burning fury in his chest. "This ends today," he muttered. Every strike, every shot, every movement was guided by more than strategy. It was guided by memory, by grief, by the promise that no one would betray humanity and survive. The Xylar soldiers fought fiercely, but humanity's precision and determination were overwhelming. One by one, their defenses fell. Boarding teams secured prisoners, rescued those who had survived, and struck down the leaders who had orchestrated the massacre. In the chaos, Elias found the Xylar officers responsible for attacking the convoy. Their arrogance faded the moment they met his eyes. "You thought you could kill without consequence," he said coldly. "You were wrong." With a final coordinated strike, the station erupted in controlled destruction. Humanity's forces withdrew just as the station's core imploded, leaving debris and fire floating in orbit. In the silence that followed, only one message remained in the orbiting debris, broadcasted across Kryvax 9 and beyond. "Allies are sacred. Betray them and Earth remembers." The victory was complete, but it was not without cost. Several ships were damaged and a few brave souls were lost. Elias felt each loss as deeply as the first day of the massacre. But there was also a spark of hope. The survivors were free. The Xylars had suffered a decisive blow, and humanity had proven its wrath was both precise and unstoppable. As the Resolute and its fleet set course away from Kryvax 9, Elias looked out at the stars. "This is only the beginning," he said. "They will remember today. They will know that humanity does not forgive. They will know that we protect our own, no matter the cost." Mara stood beside him, her voice soft but firm. "We are strong, Captain. Stronger than they ever expected." Elias nodded, feeling a mixture of sorrow and pride. The galaxy had begun to see the truth about humanity. Not just clever, not just resilient, but relentless, unyielding, and willing to fight for justice across the stars. The first strike was complete. The fire of vengeance had spread, and humanity's legend was beginning to take shape. The Xylar Dominion had learned a lesson they would never forget. Earth and her people would rise, and the stars themselves would feel their wrath. The galaxy was changing. Where once fear of the Xylar Dominion had ruled, now whispers of humanity's courage spread like wildfire. Captain Elias Renner and the USS Resolute were no longer lone avengers. They were symbols of a new force rising in the stars. Humanity had taken the first strike, and now the tide of war was turning. After the victory at Kryvax 9, the Resolute moved through enemy space with precision. Every mission was calculated, every attack deliberate. Supply lines were cut, patrols destroyed, and communications intercepted. Humanity's wrath was no longer just vengeance, it was strategy, building a network of allies and opening the galaxy to a new era. Elias walked on the bridge, watching the stars pass by like a river of fire. He felt both sorrow and pride. Sorrow for the allies who had been massacred, pride for the crews who now carried the torch of justice across the void. Humanity had learned to fight with honor and precision, and it was clear, the galaxy underestimated them at its peril. Other species began to take notice. Survivors of the attacks and those who had long feared Xylar dominance began to rally. The Lyrans, though mourning their fallen comrades, offered ships and intelligence. The Vossians contributed soldiers and engineers. Even distant systems, once neutral, sent emissaries to join the coalition. Humanity's wrath had become a beacon, inspiring hope and courage in those who had lost everything to the Xylars. In one briefing, Elias addressed his officers. "We are stronger than they know. Every victory sends a message. Humanity protects its own. Every step we take, every battle we win, strengthens our allies and weakens those who would harm us. We fight not for conquest, but for justice and survival. We fight for those who cannot fight themselves." Mara nodded, eyes shining. "They are learning, Captain. The Xylars are afraid. Even their fleets hesitate now." Elias allowed himself a brief, somber smile. "Good, fear is a teacher. But we must be careful. Complacency is dangerous. The Xylars are cunning, and they will strike back. Indeed, as the coalition grew, the Xylar Dominion became more desperate. Fleets once arrogant and relentless now retreated from engagements, avoiding humanity's forces when possible. But desperation made them dangerous. Suicidal attacks, traps, and scorched space tactics became more frequent. Humanity adapted. Every setback was met with innovation, every ambush with cunning. On the Resolute, the crew worked tirelessly. Engineers repaired ships in record time. Scientists developed new weapons and soldiers trained without pause. The suffering of the past fueled their determination. Every life lost, every ship destroyed in the first attack became a reason to fight harder, strike faster, and protect more fiercely. One evening, as the crew rested after a long mission, Elias stood at the observation deck staring at the stars. He thought of the convoy that had been destroyed, of the Lyran and Vossian allies who had fallen, of the innocent lives stolen by Xylar cruelty. The grief was heavy, but it no longer paralyzed him. It had been transformed into resolve. Humanity's wrath had become more than anger. It was purpose. "Captain," Mara said softly, coming to stand beside him, "we are making a difference. They are seeing that we will not be broken." Elias nodded, his eyes still fixed on the endless stars. "Yes. And one day, every corner of the galaxy will remember that humanity protects what it loves. Every betrayal will be answered. Every injustice corrected. We are rising, and the Xylars cannot stop us." The fleet prepared for its next campaign, moving as one across the void. Humanity's power was growing, its influence spreading. From the ashes of Massacred, a new force had been forged, relentless, united, and unstoppable. And somewhere deep in the darkness of space, the Xylar Dominion felt the first true tremors of fear. Humanity was no longer a planet to dismiss or a species to underestimate. Humanity had risen, and its wrath was becoming a rising tide, sweeping across the stars and reshaping the galaxy forever. The galaxy had become a battlefield, and Captain Elias Renner felt the weight of every life lost and every victory won. Humanity's strike against Kryvax 9 had sent ripples through Xylar space, but the Dominion was far from defeated. The war had grown larger, more dangerous, and more personal. Every ship in the fleet carried memories of friends and allies who would never return. Every mission was both a test of skill and a battle of hearts. The USS Resolute led a coalition fleet through the Outer Rim, where Xylar forces had entrenched themselves. The planets were scarred from centuries of conflict, and in the shadows, civilians still lived in fear. Humanity was not here for conquest. They were here to stop the terror, to rescue those who could be saved, and to ensure that no betrayal went unanswered. Elias gathered his officers in the command room. "We are at the heart of the war now," he said, his voice steady. "The Xylars are ruthless, and their attacks will be. But so are we. Remember why we fight. Every life we protect, every fleet we save is a promise to those we lost. This war is ours to shape, not for glory but for justice." Mara-Chen nodded. "We've trained for this, Captain. We've learned. And we've survived attacks that would have destroyed others." Elias looked out at the stars, recalling the faces of the fallen, friends from Earth, Lyran officers, Vossian soldiers, allies who had trusted humanity only to be slaughtered. That memory was both a pain and a fuel. Humanity's wrath was no longer abstract. It was precise, sharp, and relentless. The first battle of the day began near the orbit of Draelus 7, where a Xylar dreadnought had been terrorizing nearby colonies. Missiles screamed through the void, cutting through shields like a blade. Boarding teams teleported aboard enemy ships, striking with calculated fury. Every move, every shot, every command was executed with perfection, born of loss and experience. Elias personally led a strike team to the dreadnought's core. Inside, the corridors were dark and menacing, filled with the remnants of alien soldiers. They had prepared traps, but nothing could match the determination of humans who had already seen the worst of cruelty. Every corner taken, every door breached, every fight won was a step closer to justice. During the battle, Elias came across a holding cell where Xylar officers had imprisoned civilians from the outer colonies. Their eyes widened with hope and fear at the sight of humans in uniform. Elias knelt, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You are safe now," he said. "We will protect you. We fight for all of you." As the dreadnought exploded, the coalition fleet watched from the void, their cheers mixing with relief and sorrow. Ships had been lost, brave souls had fallen, but the enemy's power had been broken. Humanity's message was clear. Betray allies, harm innocents, and face the unyielding force of Earth. Yet victory carried its own weight. Every rescue, every triumph reminded Elias of the friends who were never coming back. In the quiet moments aboard the Resolute, he often walked the observation deck alone, staring at the stars and letting the memories wash over him. But those memories no longer paralyzed him. They sharpened his focus. They were reminders that humanity's strength was born from pain, loss, and relentless resolve. "We've taken the fight to them," Mara said, joining him in the observation deck. "And we're winning. They are learning what it means to face humanity." Elias nodded, eyes fixed on the endless stars. "Yes, but the heart of this war is not just about victory. It's about proving something to the galaxy, that humanity protects its own, that our allies matter, and that betrayal carries a price no one can escape." The fleet moved on, ready for the next engagement, stronger than before. Humanity had taken the first steps toward reshaping the galaxy. The Xylar Dominion was faltering, but the war was far from over. And in the hearts of every human, every ally, burned the fire of vengeance tempered with justice. This was the heart of war, and humanity was beating stronger than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy would remember this day, not as the day the Xylars fought, but as the day humanity proved it would never bow, never surrender, and never forget. The void ahead was alive with tension. Humanity's fleet had grown larger, stronger, more organized. Captain Elias Renner stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, watching the stars shimmer like distant flames. Each ship in the fleet carried the courage of countless humans, Lyrans, Vossians, and other allies who had joined the fight. Together they were a living storm, ready to bring justice to the heart of the Xylar Dominion. "This is it," Elias said quietly, almost to himself. "The final confrontation. Everything we've done, every ally we've lost, every life we've protected, it all leads to this moment." Lieutenant Mara Chen stood beside him, checking systems. "Our fleet is ready, Captain. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. They are prepared to fight to the last breath." The Xylar homeworld loomed ahead, a dark and menacing sphere surrounded by a massive fleet. Thousands of enemy ships waited, confident in their numbers and power. They had underestimated humanity before, but this time, there was no mercy to be expected. Humanity would strike not only with weapons, but with unyielding will. The battle began with a silence so intense it was almost deafening. Then, like a thunderclap, humanity's fleet surged forward. Missiles tore through enemy shields. Lasers carved paths through the void, and boarding teams teleported aboard enemy warships with precision. Every human soldier, every allied officer, fought not for glory but for justice, for memory, and for the promise that betrayal and cruelty would not go unpunished. Elias led the final strike team personally to the Xylar High Command Station. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold, filled with soldiers ready to die for their leaders. But they were no match for the resolve of humans who had already faced the worst of evil and survived. Every corridor cleared, every officer neutralized, brought humanity closer to its goal. At the heart of the station, Elias confronted the Xylar High Chancellor. The alien sneered, certain that fear would dominate. But Elias's eyes were hard, filled with grief, anger, and determination. "You massacred innocents and betrayed allies. You believed you could act without consequence. You were wrong," he said, voice cold and unwavering. With one decisive strike, the High Chancellor was defeated. Explosions rippled through the station as humanity's forces withdrew, leaving behind the shattered remains of a once mighty dominion. The Xylar fleet, leaderless and demoralized, fled into the void. Humanity had won, but the victory was not without sacrifice. As the smoke cleared, Elias walked through the observation deck of the Resolute, staring at the stars. The pain of loss still lingered. The faces of fallen friends, allies, and innocents haunted him. But there was also pride. Humanity had survived impossible odds, adapted, and risen stronger than any enemy had imagined. Mara joined him quietly. "We've done it, Captain. We've ended the threat, saved countless lives, and honored those we lost." Elias nodded, his eyes softening as he looked at the stars. "Yes, but we must remember them always. Our wrath brought justice, but it was fueled by love, loyalty, and the courage of those who stood with us. That is the true strength of humanity. Across the galaxy, messages spread, humanity protects its own. Betrayal and cruelty carry consequences. And somewhere in the darkest reaches of space, survivors of the Xylar Dominion trembled at the memory of what they had faced. For humanity, the war was over, but its legacy was just beginning. The fleet returned home, carrying the survivors, the memories, and the unbroken spirit of those who had fallen. Humanity had proven itself not just as clever or strong, but as relentless, compassionate, and capable of extraordinary unity. And as the stars stretched endlessly across the void, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never again forget Earth, its people, or the fire that had been unleashed to protect allies, defend the innocent, and ignite the hearts of every being who stood against injustice. Humanity had fought, had endured, and had risen victorious, and in the silence of space, the echoes of their wrath whispered through the stars, "We will protect what we love. Always." The galaxy was quiet now, but the silence was heavy with memory. Captain Elias Renner stood on the deck of the USS Resolute, staring at the stars. They had won the war. The Xylar Dominion was broken, their fleet scattered, their leaders defeated. Humanity had struck with precision, courage, and a fury born from loss and love. Yet victory carried its own weight. Across the fleet, survivors whispered quietly to one another, mourning those who had fallen, honoring their bravery. Each ship, each corridor, each crew carried a story of sacrifice. The faces of the Lyran officers, Vossian soldiers, and human allies who had died haunted the living. But in their memory, humanity had forged a power no enemy could ignore. Elias walked past the observation deck where holograms of fallen comrades flickered softly. He lingered on a single image, a Lyran officer smiling, holding the hand of a rescued child. The officer had been one of the first to fall in the massacre that had started this chain of vengeance. Elias pressed a hand to the hologram and whispered, "We have not forgotten. We will carry your courage forward." The fleets returned to peaceful systems, carrying supplies and aid to planets scarred by war. Humanity's presence was no longer feared. It was respected. Survivors looked to Earth not only as a military power, but as a symbol of hope and protection. Humanity had shown the galaxy that compassion could coexist with strength, that cleverness could be matched with courage, and that even in the face of unimaginable loss, a species could rise stronger than ever before. In a ceremony held above the orbit of Earth, flags of allied species flew together in solemn remembrance. Elias stood among leaders, veterans, and civilians, all gathered to honor those who had fallen. Each name was spoken aloud, each life remembered. Tears flowed, but there were also smiles, pride in bravery, pride in endurance, pride in the unbreakable spirit of humanity and its allies. Mara Chen stood beside Elias, her eyes bright. "Captain, look at what we've built. Not just ships and weapons, but trust, courage, unity. The galaxy sees it now. They see humanity for what we truly are." Elias nodded. "Yes, and we must remember that this victory is not the end. The galaxy will always face threats, but humanity has proven that no matter the odds, no matter the cruelty of our enemies, we will protect what we love. Always. That is our legacy." Across the universe, whispers carried the story of humanity's wrath and resilience. In distant systems, children played under the light of stars, telling tales of humans who fought not for greed or conquest, but for loyalty, justice, and the memory of those who had died. The legend of Earth grew, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian, a protector, a force that would not bow. Elias returned to the bridge of the Resolute, gazing into the infinite void. The stars seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the courage and unity that humanity had brought to the galaxy. The pain of loss would never disappear, but it had been transformed into something eternal: strength, resolve, and an unwavering commitment to justice. "Captain," Mara said softly, "the galaxy will remember." Elias allowed himself a small, weary smile. "Yes, they will. And in every star, in every system, the message will remain clear: humanity protects its own. Betray allies, harm the innocent, and you will face our wrath. But those who trust, those who stand with us, will find loyalty, courage, and protection beyond imagination." The USS Resolute and its fleet moved forward, carrying not just survivors, but hope. The fires of war had ended, but the flame of humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever. And as they sailed through the infinite stars, one truth echoed across the galaxy: allies were never forgotten. Betrayal was never tolerated, and Earth's wrath, tempered with love and courage, had ignited the stars forever. Humanity had fought. Humanity had endured. Humanity had risen, and in every corner of the galaxy the legend of Earth would live, unbroken, eternal, and unstoppable.